Hello everyone, this is Dr. Meyer here with a video for you on secondary leading tone chords. This video expands our understanding of tonicization and tonicizing chords. If you haven't yet watched the video on secondary dominants, please go to the link in the description and start there first. Let's get started. To review, secondary dominants are dominant quality chords which temporarily tonicize a different key area other than the current tonic. They're built on scale degrees other than scale degree 5 and help to hint at a new key. For example, a dominant chord built on A in the key of G major would act as a secondary dominant of D, or 5/7 of 5. If you need more review on secondary dominants, there's a link in the description for that video. Let's start our discussion of secondary leading tone chords with an example. Here's a Mozart piano sonata opening from K311 Movement 3. Have a listen. We have the beginning of a sentence structure in which the basic idea moves to tonicize A major. In this repetition of the basic idea, we can see that the basic idea is sequenced down a step to that level of the dominant. So how is this tonicization approached? See this chord here with the G sharp accidental? If we collect up the pitches, we have G sharp, B, D, or a G sharp diminished triad. In D major, there is not a diatonic triad built on G sharp, so we need to do some investigating. In D major, diatonically there is only one diminished quality triad on C sharp. So, much like with secondary dominants, if we have a diminished quality triad, it must be acting as 7 in some key. In what key is G sharp the leading tone? You guessed it, A major. And here's that chord on 7. So if we are in the key of D major as 1, but we have the 7 diminished of the key of A, and A is the dominant of D, how should we label this chord? Here's our score again, this time with all those Roman numeral labels. See how we can account for the diminished quality triad on 7, but suggest that it is 7 of A, or of 5, with our slash notation instead of in the key of D. In the same way that we would for secondary dominants, we say 7/6 of 5 for the Roman numeral. Note how the secondary leading tone chord resolves to 5, just as you would expect a tonicizing chord to resolve. Let's listen to the example one more time. Here's another example from Schumann's Der Spielmann. Let's listen first. In D minor, the piece opens with a B natural diminished triad. We know that B diminished is not in the key of D minor, so we think, what key is B the leading tone of? Yes, of course, C major, so we can label this as 7 diminished of major 7. What about this chord in the second measure? If we collect up the pitches, we can see that G sharp, B, D, and F make a G sharp fully diminished 7th chord. We know from our previous example that G sharp diminished does not exist in D major, and here a G sharp fully diminished 7th does not exist diatonically in D minor either. So the same logic applies here, and we'll label it as 7 fully diminished 7 of 5. Here's the remaining Roman numerals to show that this 7th chord resolves to the dominant of which it is tonicizing. Let's listen once more to hear those secondary chords in action. These two examples have shown that we can find both triads and seventh chords functioning as secondary leading tone chords. In the case of a fully diminished seventh chord, there's only one found in every key, so finding the tonicizing key area is quite easy, as it's only a half step higher than the root of the chord. You may be thinking, okay, what about major mode? One small analysis and labeling thing here. The type of diminished seventh chord is typically related to the type of tonicized triad, that is, the chord underneath the slash. If the tonicized triad is minor, the leading tone chord is fully diminished, as we have seen in our other example. If it's major, the leading tone chord can be either half diminished or fully diminished, though fully diminished chords are used most often. So think if I have a chord under the slash which is minor, generally it's going to be fully diminished. If it's major, it could be either, but sometimes we'll have fully diminished more often. In this case, tonicization happened to related key areas. So since the dominant in minor is usually altered to become a major triad, the fully diminished seventh here better suggests the minor dominant, keeping us nearer to D minor. If this went over your head, there's more on this in class. The resolution of the secondary leading tone chord are the same as regular leading tone chords. The temporary leading tone should resolve up a step, and the seventh of the chord, as all sevenths do, and if one is present, should resolve down by step. Now it's your turn to practice. Listen to the opening of Joanna Kinkel's Römische Nacht. Focus on any chromatically altered pitches to zero in on those secondary leading tone chords. Pause the video now if you need more time for analysis. You should have found this D-sharp fully diminished seventh chord in the second full measure. It's behaving as 7-6-5 of 2 in D major, and it does resolve to the 2 chord in E minor in that same measure. Note how the chord is fully diminished in quality because it's tonicizing a minor key area. The rest of the chords in this excerpt are diatonic to D major, so no alteration needed. Let's listen one more time. Here's what we learned in this video. Secondary leading tone chords can be triads or seventh chords and are built on scale degree 7 of some key. The tonicized key will be related to the original tonic. They resolve the same way that diatonic seventh chords do to their new tonicized do. If the chord contains a seventh, it's likely that it will be fully diminished seventh versus a half diminished seventh. Discovering which key your chord originated from is part of the puzzle. Find out how that key relates to your current tonic and place it underneath the slash. Remember, as with any secondary chord, we cannot tonicize diminished triads, so no 7 diminished of 7 diminished or 7 diminished of 2 diminished in minor. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.